The Buffalo Bills have their coaching staff in defensive coordinator Bobby Babich and offensive coordinator Joe Brady. All of this and more on this week's edition of the Buffalonian podcast. All right, let's go. We are back with the Buffalonian podcast. I'm Joe Cali, featuring my backpack behind me. I didn't realize that, so we're going to keep it rolling here. Featuring, as always, Dom Lost to kick it off here.
Here, I'll put mine.
Put your, oh, God, the Red Sox throwing it up there early. It's a week. Right now, the Bills did not play. The Super Bowl is set as we await the most prestigious of NFL games, the Pro Bowl, coming up this weekend. The best of the best play flag football.
The second most popular flag football game behind the Buffalonian Bowl.
The Buffalonian Bowl did peak. I will say that. That was essentially flag football in a nutshell. The NFL could never. That's all I have to say. Anyway, as heard in the intro, the Bills made some moves on the coaching staff, went into the offseason hot, got some things done. We'll talk about that. First, Kansas City's playing in another Super Bowl. Taylor Swift is out here getting it's a mix of NFL media and paparazzi now. That's what we have to deal with. After the game, Travis Kelce just showed up for the playoffs. He took 18 weeks off, showed up for the playoffs, went through the playoffs and won. They're on the field after, getting swarmed. What's your thought? Did you think Baltimore was going to get the job done? And were you disappointed that they didn't?
Wasn't she an Eagles fan too? So I mean, she jumped ship at
the
proper moment.
She did. She jumped ship. Her dad had trouble with that, she said.
No, well. Yeah. I mean, Baltimore had as good a chance as anyone of knocking them off. I mean, home game MVP as your quarterback. That defense, which didn't have the best first halves of all time, but the second half didn't allow a single point. I'm a little bit surprised because, I mean, obviously Baltimore is a 4.5 point favorite, and that's a pretty significant favorite. I would say. It is,
yeah.
That's more neutral site. If they were playing in the Super Bowl, they would probably be favored by about 2 points, 2.5. Same as the San Fran is. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, yeah.
Which I think is stupid, but we're not going to talk about that game right now.
No, we'll do a Super Bowl preview at some point. You know, it was tough. You don't want to see the whole quote that I've been seeing going around is America lost when the Ravens lost. And while, yes, I can admit that the Chiefs came up in the big moments, got the job done, they won the games, so you can't really be too frustrated. I mean, what happened at the end of the day. They won the games. They got to the end. It'll be Chiefs 49ers, the rematch, and we all know how the world started going after that game in 2020. So we're going to hope to avoid that the second time around. But it should be a decent game. We're going to talk a lot about it. Coming up here in the coming weeks, we'll probably do a Super Bowl pregame show like we did last year. Chiefs, Eagles. Hopefully this one's an entertaining one. But
I did pick that game right.
You did. You did pick that game right. So we'll see if the streak continues.
I do say I think there are a lot of takeaways to be had from conference championship game weekend.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Bills fans. I know last year I didn't really watch the AFC Championship game very closely.
No,
I was still absolutely butthurt from.
That was just last year's loss, though. As we said, was different. It was we got smacked around.
But I think there's a lot of things though to take away from how the Bills can grow as a team. First off, Ben Johnson staying as the offensive coordinator for Detroit, which is kind of a shocker.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the value of having a good young offensive coordinator that may not be. That feels young enough in their career that they don't need to jump ship right away to being a head coach. They could be enough. I'm sure they paid them a hefty.
They had to keep him around because that offense looked solid all year.
But I think that's where Joe Brady comes in. But before we talk about that, I think the speed of the defenses was a real, especially Baltimore's defense.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Kansas City's defense showed up.
The speed of those two defenses on the field and the tackling, I think was definitely a interesting kind of way as a Bills team that hasn't always had the fastest defense. And have never been. I mean, even when the Bills have good defenses, they never have been a good tackling defense.
Yes.
So I think that's actually really interesting. Of maybe that's where the Bills kind of segue a little bit in this offseason. Obviously, probably moving on from Porter and Hyde.
Unfortunately, as it may be, you have to. I think at this point, age-wise,
I think maybe getting a little bit faster in the secondary, and also maybe getting a little bit bigger up front. We saw the Ravens have like 350-pound D tackles. Like, those dudes are huge. It's tough to move in the run game. So I think maybe getting a little bigger in the defensive tackle position to make it harder for teams to push you around. And I think getting a little bit faster in that third levels, the back seven. I mean, you saw Kyle Hamilton. Like, that guy just run. That's why I always think safety in the first round.
Bobby Boucher back there.
Yeah, that's why I always think safety in the first round is kind of a position that may happen.
Yeah,
especially if either a run wide receivers happens.
If the Pickens are getting out of the slim Pickens we're dealing with here, wide receiver wise, you could see that for sure.
I mean, and also I just have to say, I mean, the most cursed thing the Chiefs has ever done to the Bills is trade up and take Trent McDuffie over them.
Yeah,
Kyrie Irving.
Yeah,
I mean, that is just
that was bad.
That is brutal. But no, I mean, you got to give credit to just overall, you got to give credit to the Chiefs for moving on from Tyreek and using those assets to really change their entire team and how they invest in the offensive line. So, I mean, yeah, sure, wide receiver is kind of a strange position for them, but then they also have Rice. And obviously, of course, MVS becomes Jerry Rice.
Yeah, out of nowhere, the dude's literally dropped the games in his hands. We watched one together, the Eagles game they played earlier in the year. Dropped the game-winning touchdown there. And the guy just puts together all-time performances in the playoffs, so you can't discredit that. But it's quite a bruh moment, if you ask me, at the end of the day.
I just think what you could take away from the conference championship games is speed defensively and the ability to be creative. Find different ways to get your playmakers the ball in space.
Yeah.
We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown take a handoff. We all know Debo's kind of that can play the running back position as well.
A little bit, yeah.
It's kind of having. I think the word versatile is crucial for both sides of football nowadays, and I think all four teams showed that ability, and I mean, also again, just still Trent McDuffie.
Yes, that does ring true, absolutely. One thing though that's a takeaway is the Bills in the regular season play all of these championship teams. They're going to be on their schedule at some point when we get the schedule released. So that is one thing to keep in mind. All the top caliber teams you're going to be going through in the regular season next year. So
and the Bills probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, they won't play any of these. They won't play the week 1 first game of the year.
No,
the kickoff game, because they play Kansas City and San Francisco in Orchard Park. They play in Detroit and in Baltimore. So if those teams would have won, there would have been an opportunity, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And football is a game of inches, as you saw from the Zay Flowers fumble. So
yes, yeah.
I guess before we get into the coaching stuff, or maybe some slight draft talk, because the Senior Bowl is happening right now.
Yeah, the Reese Senior Bowl. Yeah.
But I guess we do have to. I think this is how Baltimore lost and the MVP, and I think we do have to discuss,
the odds.
What does this mean for Josh Allen's legacy?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, no, it's a valid conversation, because Allen, in a lot of ways, had a season up there with Jackson. Yeah, a little more turnover prone, absolutely different style of play, the gunslinger versus the versatile running quarterback that got a lot better at throwing the ball over the years. Lamar's a great quarterback, but both kind of fall short in the postseason, and Lamar's thrown into triple coverage all of a sudden, which he hasn't done all season. So that's what do you think before we keep getting deep into this here?
First of all, I have a lot of respect for Lamar. I think I've always been higher on Lamar than most.
Yeah.
Heck, I had him for the MVP. So
you did.
I've always respected Lamar. I think he's a great player. I think he's on the same tier as Josh. If we're doing like rankings, I don't think I'd find it hard to have him above Josh.
Yeah.
But if we're in the same, I think absolutely. Listen, tier 1 is Mahomes, and no one is in Mahomes' tier.
And we've been consistent on that all season long.
But I think what the consistency, we've been consistent about no one's been on Mahomes' as a ranking level.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just have to be honest and be like, no one is on Mahomes' tier. Like
he's the Brady of this
tier
generation.
1,
Mm-hmm.
it's tier Mahomes.
Yeah.
And then it comes tier 1. Like
yeah.
no one is it's consistency, it's the ability for every time in a big game he always comes through.
Mm-hmm. That's his 6th AFC Championship appearance too.
Yep, 4th Super Bowl now, which is as much as Manning had in his entire career.
Yeah.
He has as many playoff wins as Manning has had in his entire career. I think he's tied for 3rd with like Bradshaw, Elway. I think has 14 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to 15, and Montana's at 16, and Brady's at 35. So
yeah,
it's just insane. But talking about the next kind of level of quarterbacking below Mahomes, I think it's easily Josh. It's Lamar. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan.
I am too. Maybe we'll
Burrow,
see.
I think, has to be up there. I know with the injury concerns.
Yeah.
And then we'll see if all the rookie quarterbacks or who's going to take another step. A lot of people had Jalen Hurts in that tier. I don't think he's in that tier anymore. So,
no.
I think for me, it leads to Lamar was very valuable, and I don't think it's we're gonna look back and be like, oh my god, it's just an awful MVP. But I think people may look back after this run and be like, he probably shouldn't have won the award. But
yeah.
I think it's close. I think it's hard to, because you had to. Then we have 2 more games, right, to have a sample size for both players.
Yep.
And we saw how one quarterback season ended on a missed field goal on putting up 24 points at home
against the Super Bowl appearance
against the same team that the next week scored 10 points and turned the ball over 2 times and had a really costly red zone interception. So I think, again, from a biased perspective as a Bills fan, I think Josh is better than Lamar by a very thin margin, and I think we're gonna see that he probably should have won the MVP. But the MVP becomes really political. It just does.
It becomes a blurred line. There's no
criteria for what is most valuable.
Is it most valuable to the team? Most valuable of the position? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
because it's not like
because I'm gonna say
the scoring title in basketball. Like,
right.
That is a quantitative award. Like, you scored the most points per game. There is a object that if you do that, you're gonna win the scoring title.
Mm-hmm.
For the MVP, it's like, yeah, you threw a lot of touchdowns, you ran for a lot of touchdowns, you had a lot of total yards, you also had a lot of turnovers. Your team won 11-6, kind of was 6-6. We have this other guy who may not have the gaudy statistical numbers, but his team led at every time in the 2-minute warning, except one game now with the Chiefs game.
Yeah.
But went for, well, I should say what he started because they didn't lead the 2-minute warning against Pittsburgh, but they didn't have their starters. So,
yeah,
the 16 games he started, they were leading on all 16 games with 2-minute warning. But then if he got hurt and Tyler Huntley was in, what would their season be? And if Josh Allen got hurt and Kyle Allen came in, what would their season be? But do we identify ourselves with that? Because that's kind of unfair, because I think people would consider Tyler Huntley to be not like he's a fantastic quarterback.
Pro Bowl quarterback?
I knew you were going to say that. I was trying to avoid saying that. But I think everyone would say Tyler Huntley is more valuable than Kyle
100%.
Allen. So are we allowed to make that comparison? Because that's a kind of like a team roster building.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right, though. It is a gray area, because you have to you kind of have to look at it as, take them out of the equation. Who's more valuable?
If you just said take them out of the equation, and whatever the absolute league average was in passer rating, QBR, PFF grade, if you took all those measures and said you were going to get the most average quarterback,
Derek Carr.
That was actually good.
You put Derek Carr on both teams,
right? And what would the record be? And I think you would have to say that the Ravens probably have a better overall roster than the Bills.
Yes.
So does that make Lamar less
valuable?
Less valuable?
Yeah. It's a big blurred line.
Because he does a lot of things. Because that offense would be different with Derek Carr than Lamar. Mm-hmm. See, that's where you get in trouble. It's because then it's like, oh, right, well, the offense had a complete change because Lamar does so many things. But then when if Derek Carr was on the Bills offense, all those QB runs at the goal line or like their low red zone packages would have to change because Derek Carr and Josh Allen. So I think we get it is tough to say what is most valuable. I think if I had to vote before the regular season, I would have voted Lamar.
Mm-hmm. Just based on team performance and him in that system.
Just based on team performance, and I think stats. I don't know. I always felt like Lamar will always be like lower on the counting stats.
Yeah, 100%.
I think his value is more than just what he does statistically. So I don't know. It's tough though. I think now I probably would vote Josh, but that's also being.
I think that's
not
where
the award.
Right. We've seen a lot of the national media have these conversations of Dan Orlovsky's been a big Josh Allen promoter throughout the season through the turnovers, which I want to point out. Brady had 78 throughout his first 6 seasons, and Josh has 78 throughout his first 6 seasons in the playoffs. So that narrative is getting a little dry for me. But anyway, Josh Allen, you remove him from the Bills, like we said there, put Derek Carr in that position. You lose those red zone touchdowns. You lose that score. You lose the scores and the rushing yardage in general, saving them on 3rd and long. Allen rolling out to the right. The team's not as successful. Lamar, Tyler Huntley went in. And say Derek Carr's in, I think they've just, like you said, a better overall roster that could complement a lesser quarterback. So that it's the blurred line.
But because the Ravens have a better roster than the Bills, does that disqualify Lamar from being
right?
MVP?
It shouldn't,
so
right? Like
I think that's where
that's where the blurred
there's
line
not
is.
a known criteria. I think that's where it's. I mean, that's why it's so much fun debating this award because heck, people could have like some person.
We could have a one fan from every 32 teams, and everyone would have a different opinion.
Statistically, this will be the weakest quarterback MVP for a considerable amount of time, I would say. Just based on his EPA, his counting stats.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not deserved, but
turnovers.
I think maybe, again, I would have voted for Lamar, but maybe we need to focus a little bit less on team success and more on who's getting them, who's really contributing, like, a massive contributor factor. Like it's kind of like if the NBA, I know I'm comparing it, but occasionally the 6th seed when the best player in the 6th seed wins the MVP. It doesn't mean that they were the best team, but if they took Russell Westbrook off the team, like they probably wouldn't have been very good. Like that's where I don't know, that's where the fun sports are. But
yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what's eventually decided with the award because the finalists there, CMC's in the mix too, is he? Or Tyreek?
Yep, they're both. There's 2 Niners, I think. I think it's Lamar,
Purdy?
Josh, Purdy, McCaffrey, and Dak. Yeah.
Do you think Purdy has a shot?
No. I say that.
No, there's a lot of people saying he does. I was just curious to see what you think.
I said that. I say that. To win the MVP, no. I mean, it's Lamar. I mean, if we're being that, it's Lamar. If you're saying who is 2, I don't know. Dak finished 2nd team All-Pro. Purdy was 3rd team. Well, I shouldn't say 3rd team All-Pro, but there's no 3rd team All-Pro. But
Dak is a 2nd team All-Pro is just so fraudulent right in my face. I can't believe
again, but he had a very good statistical season, and that's where do
you get bailed out by the team around you or like?
But that's what I'm saying is that's where it's tough is with all these awards is that no one is taking Dak Prescott. Heck, if we wanted to give the most valuable player to the best player, you would just give it to Patrick Mahomes every year. Mm-hmm. But he didn't have the statistical season to warrant it, right? No. So I think I don't know. I think that's where it's just a slippery slope from there. But no, I don't think Purdy has a chance to win the MVP, and nor do I think he should. I mean, listen, Purdy, fine player,
Mr. Irrelevant to Super Bowl. Great story. He's got a great system around him, though, and not saying he's a system guy, but he kind of is.
Purdy made it a lot of plays with his feet on Sunday.
He did,
which was a very clear glimpse of saying that he's Tua and Jared Goff he's probably in the same tier-ish of being in a good system, but he's a little bit better under pressure. I think he was 3rd in the NFL. I think only 13% of his pressures turned to sacks. The only 2 that were better was not Lamar, Patrick Mahomes and Josh.
Yeah.
So he's better with dealing with pressure, but he also has a lot of turnover-worthy plays. He puts the ball in harm's way a lot of times. So
he does, yeah.
It's that luck. He had a 51-yard completion with one off the dude's face mask. Darnell Savage in the divisional round dropped a pick 6. I think he's a solid quarterback. I think saying he's elite. Listen, you get credit for the wins, but I don't know. It's like a little bit like a Lamar too. I mean, you get credit for the wins, but
at the end of the day, wins aren't the only quarterback stat. not really one that.
And it's the name of the job. It's the name of the job for the quarterback position, though. You get credit for the wins, and you get too much credit for the wins, and you get too much blame for the losses. But
yeah,
I don't think they'd have it anyway. But moving, I do have to say one more thing before we talk about the coordinators.
Yes.
A lot of fourth down aggressiveness in the games.
Yes.
John Harbaugh goes for it on 4th and 1 on his own 34, converts, they score a touchdown, the drive tied at 7. John Harbaugh, I believe, at his own 18, 4th and 3, goes for it, down 10, converts. I think that might have been the fumble. No, I don't think that was a fumble drive, but they, again, went for it deep in his own territory. Andy Reid went for a 4th and 2, near 45, 40 yard. And we all know about Dan Campbell. Like, I think we need to normalize going for it and being it's okay to be aggressive. I mean,
you saw the Bills, the divisional game.
My frustration
first drive, they go for it on their own 35.
My frustration with this is this. It's that every time someone goes on 4th down, it's like analytics. It's like, dude, have you seen Dan Campbell? Do you think he's really gives a crap about the numbers?
No.
Like,
dude screaming, he's all about the power on the side.
Dude has 1,000 milligrams of caffeine in his blood. Like, he's just going to go for it because he wants
He's busting kneecaps.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, come on.
And is it... I don't know. I think in this day and age, we have to stop. Well, it would have been all right if he didn't go for on those 2 4th downs and they missed the 2 field goals and they still lost. Would he be getting trashed? I mean, come on. Like, let's be serious. And it's his fault that his receiver dropped the ball on 4th down. Like, I just think that's silly. And
your hindsight's 2020. You're able to go back and do that.
Hindsight is undefeated.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with the MVP we just talked about.
Yes.
Like, maybe we should have given it to Josh. Like, it's hindsight.
Yeah, and you're not thinking that in the moment. So you're gonna go with your gut in the moment and then look back on it after and learn from it. You can't expect that to be made in game like that quick, like knowing the future. But
exactly.
Let's move in to the coordinators here. Joe Brady, officially now the offensive coordinator after the Bills interviewed around a little bit. You see the press conferences. We've seen what they've done since switching to Brady from Ken Dorsey. It's been a lot of positives. Allen's numbers, cherry-picked a lot, went down a little bit from when Dorsey to Brady, but you saw him come back to who Allen is a little bit there. So what do you think, keeping Brady around? I mean, Falcons were going to give him an interview for the head coach job, but I don't know if he actually did that or not.
No, he did. Listen, this is where I think analytics get in a little bit of trouble because everyone was like quote tweeting because Ian Rappaport said he ignited the offense, I want to say. And listen, on a lot of models, the Bills didn't get quite the EPA on the run or EPA on the pass or success rate. But I think there's something to be said for vibes that you can't measure. Again, the stuff that you can't measure. You can't measure vibes. You can't measure
luck,
momentum. You can't measure luck. And sure, did the Bills get a little lucky here or there? Absolutely. Josh Allen fumbled on the last possession that they had.
And Spencer Brown comes in and plays the hero.
Happened to land on it. If that happened in week 5, that's going 60 yards for a touchdown.
Right, yeah. You got lucky. You got lucky.
But there's also something for vibes. There's something for momentum. There's something for attitude. There's something for belief. And listen, I think Ken Dorsey is a good play designer, but I don't think he's, he has good, I'm trying to think of a good example of he works with very nice colors, but he's not a very good painter. Like, he doesn't know.
He's not Bob Ross.
He creates awesome colors, but he doesn't know when to use them in the right moment in the picture.
Yeah, he's the guy from Blue's Clues drawing crayons on a notepad.
Yeah.
And he could be Bob Ross.
Yeah.
But he's not.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, too. You saw, Allen already talked about this in a press conference. You saw him mention it. We're going to do simple better. That sounds very enticing in a way, right? Because when Dorsey came in, a lot of the complaint was we're getting a little too complicated here, putting the ball in Josh's hand, making him do everything, right? Like,
it's more of maybe not sticking to the run at the most moments. Maybe, having a beater for every single coverage you may face on a certain play may not be a great solution because that means everyone's got to be on. I mean, I think a perfect example of something I didn't even think about, but there was a play in the Chiefs-Ravens game where Mahomes threw the ball behind the receiver, and I was like, oh, that was a crap throw by Patrick Mahomes. Like, and it was a little out route. And Tony Romo said, actually, he probably thought the receiver was going to go up the field a little bit more, then turn. And I was like, you know what? I didn't quite think about that. That's like half a yard, but that half a yard would have been a completed pass.
Yeah.
Like that stuff matters. Like knowing exactly, hey, I know Kincaid right here, he's going to run a 7-yard out, and at the 7-yard, he's going to cut it. Or on the 7-yard, he likes to loop a little bit more, so it's going to be more 7.5 yards. Like,
yes,
I think that stuff, just from a normal fan perspective of just learning that, is like really mind-boggling to me.
Tony Romo does a great job breaking all that down, by the way. Every game he's got something like that.
I think of Joe Brady, the best phrase you could probably use is that he was cooking with Ken Dorsey's, he was making a car with Ken Dorsey's tools, not his own.
Yes, he kept that engine running.
His parts, he was making a car with Ken Dorsey's parts, not his own parts. So I think having another year, getting maybe more of his guys, I know they're bargaining bin shopping, but Curtis Samuel might be an interesting name. His guys maybe in the draft to fit more of his scheme, getting his scheme more involved. I'm very excited because he looks to be a very solid offensive coordinator. And listen,
he'll only grow from where he is now, I think.
Yeah, but then with Bobby B, I'm just not gonna butcher saying his
Bobby
last name.
Babbage,
and I will. So, but yeah, getting him for the DC again, I don't think he's going to call plays. He's
going to be a Bieniemy to McDermott's.
Yes.
Andy
Oh, that was
Reid.
good. That was good.
Thanks.
But I think he is incredibly valuable. I mean, as everyone says, everything he's touched has turned to complete 100% gold.
There was also interest from other teams having him.
Dolphins.
Yeah, Dolphins.
Get out of here.
What'd you say?
I said get out of here.
True. Squish the fish. We don't want him going to the Dolphins, but it's a great hire in my opinion. Promotion.
I mean, listen, he was good with the safeties, all pros. Both were all pros. Last year we talked about Tremaine. He got a bag. Milano was first team all pro. This year everyone's talking about Terrell Bernard being
right away.
Freaking Tyrell Dodson was trash, and now all of a sudden he's
a big playmaker on the defense.
A playmaker.
Yeah.
So I think getting him a bigger role with the team, keeping him is crucial. Eric Washington leaves. I know he was kind of. He's not the DC, but he was kind of like the acting DC because he would do the press conferences. He had the assistant head coaching title.
Yes.
It seems to me that they valued Bobby more than him because Washington left to go become the DC for the Bears and become Matt Eberflus's Eric Bieniemy for the defense because he's not even calling the plays.
Yeah.
So
right, exactly. Yeah. Also, just a quick note, Ken Dorsey, congratulations. You get to work with the Creep now. You got hired by the Cleveland Browns. Just got to throw that out there, too. Saw that the other day. But Bobby Babbage, I'm very happy with.
Both young, too. 34 for Brady, yes. 40 for Bobby. So
keep the youth.
It will be interesting to see what happens with the position coaches now. Because it seems like, obviously, we have McDermott as the head.
Obviously.
And then we have the 3 coordinators now in Brady, Babbage, as I said it, and Matt Smiley. It looks like he's going to stay on the special teams coordinator. They probably would have fired him by now.
Well, if he puts 12 men on the field again, I think he's gone.
But then we have now an opening at linebacker coach. You have an opening at D-line coach. You have an opening at quarterback coach. So it's going to be interesting to see who they fill. Maybe it's some of the guys that they interviewed for those coordinator roles. Maybe it's Mike Caldwell.
Who
worked well with the linebackers. I believe he was a linebacker coach before that. Devin Lloyd had a very good year for Jacksonville, so maybe he's the new linebacker. Maybe they looked at him. Thad Lewis had a very good, successful season with Baker Mayfield as the quarterback coach down in Tampa. He interviewed for the offensive coordinator job. And obviously the offensive coordinator for Tampa left to become the head coach of the Panthers. So maybe he's looking to move on, or maybe he's going to be that. I don't know if they've made an official announcement who's their new offensive coordinator. So
have to wait and see on that.
Again, I think we get to wait and see a little bit, but I think that's exciting.
It's a good start to the Bills' offseason, I would say. It is a good start, getting these guys secured.
Yeah, but getting the internal superstars to stay, I think, is important. And then
building from there.
Yeah, it's almost like some people like working for Sean McDermott. I like to see the 3 roles, D-line, linebacker, quarterback, filled by people not in the organization, though.
Yeah, maybe they go outside for him. I would like to see that too, because they do a lot of promoting from within. That seems to be the culture of Pagula as well. You have the Sabres promoting from within, Kevin Adams to the GM position and all that stuff. So,
but as you allude to, though, Joe Brady. Listen, listen, the last two, the selling point for the Bills is very clear for anyone who wants to be the quarterback coach.
You could be the OC.
The last two guys got to call plays for the best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, Ken Dorsey was the quarterbacks coach. Dable leaves, he's in, and Joe Brady was the quarterback coach, and now he's the offensive coordinator. So now maybe they don't do it a third time if it fails, but hopefully there's some success with that. Excuse me. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I guess the Senior Bowl has started. I definitely just taking a deep dive into. I would say the three biggest needs for the Bills going into the offseason is wide receiver, safety, and D-line, more focused on defensive tackle.
100%.
I think those are the three positions. There's a lot of good ones. The Texas duo is very good.
Yeah.
Cam Kitchens, the safety out of Miami. The U is very highly doubted.
The U.
Also, we may throw the Bills have a bunch of day 3 picks. They have 10 total picks, but I think they have like 3 6-round picks or some high number because they just traded back. They punted on last year's draft. But maybe we throw a dart at a quarterback to get maybe the backup quarterback. I know they threw one with Jake Fromm that didn't quite work out.
I've seen I know you might like this as a ND guy. I know I made a joke last week, but a couple people have mocked Notre Dame coming here. Sam, what's his name?
Hartman.
Hartman.
He's a good quarterback. He reminds me a little bit too much of Jake Fromm from the perspective of kind of undersized, not maybe an NFL talent guy, but maybe more of a Chase Daniel who will be like a backup for like 15 years and make $30 million. Easton Stick. Sorry, it's just so forgettable. I can't remember his name.
What did you say?
Ethan Stick. Yeah, I was close. I mean, I was right there, but someone like that, that could do a decent job at, being the emergency.
If you need him, I always would say if you're a contending team and if your quarterback missed a month, are you calling the phones around the league? Or are you comfortable if you're backup? If you're not, and that's what you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Like, are you comfortable with the Bills' current backup situation with Kyle Allen? No, I'm not either. No. You know who I was most comfortable with? Mitch Trubisky. I'm gonna be honest with you.
And he wasn't even that good.
No, he wasn't even that good.
Look at him in Pittsburgh.
But he could have, I think, played Allen's position better. The mobileness.
The only reason why I would trust Mitch is because Dable was I could trust Dable as a play caller to get them going. But yeah, he's been awful in Pittsburgh, so I don't even know. And then Keenum wasn't even that great. Heck, we almost needed Keenum because Josh injured his elbow. So no, it should be a fascinating thing. My only question before you get to the Sabres is I saw this question. Oh, it's okay. I usually say some funny things. Out of these three players, you could get one of them back right now for snap of a finger for a market value deal. Maybe a little lower. Like a win-win. Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones. Which one are you picking and why?
Oh, that is so tough. Those three are so great.
I feel like they could get one of them back and two of them leaving. Also, with Eric Washington going for the D-line position, I should say D-line. He's a defensive coordinator now, but coming from the D-line position, we may see some of those guys detract to Chicago.
You could, yeah.
Join Tremaine.
Knows them, yeah. Listen, I think Leonard Floyd was fantastic the entire season. He did more than what was expected of him coming into Phil Von Miller's shoes. Daquan missed a lot of the season with the pec injury, but he made an impact whenever he was in. Epinesa had he broke out. He had his best season, I would say. Like, he had more interceptions than Sauce Gardner. I know that's a trashy stat, but I just think it's hysterical. Age-wise, I'm going AJ Epinesa. I'm going to be honest with you. I think he's more serviceable. I think you have more time with him. He's shown a lot of promise. As great as Leonard Floyd was, I think you had him on limited time anyway. His age is he's up there a little bit. Epinesa you could work with for a long time if he stays on the track he's on now. Sure. So I think that's my bet, Epinesa. What do you think?
I think I would order them Daquan, AJ, Floyd. I'm not on bringing Leonard Floyd back just from the perspective of it seems like he just wants to get paid, which is good for him. I mean,
well, he made a comment, didn't he?
Yeah, I had a 10-sack season, so good for him. Heck, maybe the Bills get a comp pick for that. AJ's close. Just obviously he's younger, and he put it together this season, but after he got injured, he wasn't kind of the same guy, so that kind of concerns me that really we're talking about maybe a 12-game sample of him being a doable rotational edge.
Yeah.
And even with that, he was still, like, getting snapped behind Gruden and Leonard Floyd, so he wasn't even starting. So that's where like my concern would be is like I think the Bills view him as a rotational edge, and I think he might test the waters to think of some team that may think he's a starting edge.
Yeah.
But for Daquan, I think it's clear the Bills view him as a
starter,
very good one tech. I think the league will, but and he's older. He's coming off the torn pec, which is kind of
that position you're constantly
using
it. So you don't know.
So I would say it'd be Daquan because I think they get a better deal for Daquan, and I think Daquan's the best player of the three of them. Also, they don't have any defensive tackles signed other than Ed Oliver, and Ed Oliver played very good ball with Daquan. They have good chemistry. So
they do.
If we're gonna say, hey, maybe bring Daquan back for a year or two and draft a young defensive tackle, so he has he's a third guy. I would do that in a heartbeat. And you also still have Groot. Hopefully Von Miller can kind of get back to being all right. You still have Kingsley Jonathan. Maybe Jonathan's able to take Shaq Lawson's role as a fourth D end. Maybe Miller could be kind of solid, and you have Groot as a starter. So I think Edge they're going to get another veteran, but I think they're going to go cheap.
Yeah.
With that. But yeah.
No, because like we said, Miller could be a Trey White situation where the ACL he didn't come back the same season. But he's got the half season, and then he'll start showing himself again. But I think that could be interesting. And of course, we have a whole entire offseason, months and months and months to go through all this stuff. Yeah. But I think it's time we get into the hot and not.
Yeah, I know we're running a little late. We're in late with the Bills because
just conversation opens up.
I mean, it's we can talk about, but we'll talk about them for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Here, the Sabres. They got 2 out of 3 on the road. Obviously, just completely no-showed against the Ducks.
That was pitiful. It was disgusting.
Then they didn't show up in the first period against the Kings. Rallied in that one. I thought Levi was done, to be honest. After he gave up 3 goals in the first, I was like, "This is done with Levi." And then he had a really good second and third period.
Went on a hot streak for the second.
Yeah, fell behind, I believe, 2-0 to the Sharks, or fell behind early to the Sharks and rallied in that one.
I guess they're a team that doesn't play in the first period. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that seems to be appropriate here.
I don't know. They're 6 now in the Atlantic. They're 22, 23, and 4, so they're on pace for about 80 points, maybe a little less than that.
Oh, great.
They're tied with.
That's not getting you a playoff spot.
No, obviously not. Yeah, I think it's a situation. Obviously, Jack Quinn getting injured. Apparently, he had surgery and he's going to be out 2 months.
What did they? Well, of course, it's the NHL, so LBI.
Probably
lower body
maybe
injury.
an ankle. They didn't say he had any damage to his knee, but yeah, I think it's just it's frustrating from that perspective of a guy that was starting to get his rhythm back. That line was really starting to cook.
It was.
Peterka's really taking that next step. I would also have to say I think the demise of Dylan Cousins has been a complete exaggeration.
Yeah.
With the perspective of I think shooting luck is a big reason why he hasn't had. I think he's under 4 goals under expected. I don't know what the Sabres do from here. I think they have to call up Yuri Kulik or Rosine, but then it's funny because both those guys are really struggling in the AHL. I think Kulik and Rosine have combined for 2 points in the last 7 games. So I just can't call up Lucas Ruzek and expect me to be okay.
You can't. And do you think? I know Don made a hot prediction a couple weeks ago here last week.
They're not going to fire him.
Granado, I don't think he'll be gone by the 6th.
Unfortunately, that doesn't look too hot. But I'll say this: I think it would be wise for them to roll with UPL and Comrie, let Levi cook in the AHL for a month, and then get him back maybe in March for the last 10, 15 games and see where you're at. I think for the Sabres, getting Kulik and Rosine to take that top 6 power play spot, I think would be really good for their development.
Very much so.
And I don't know what they do with Zach Benson. He has 1 point in his last 14 games.
Not really.
I know it's not all him.
Now.
I know it's not all him, but he's definitely hit the rookie wall, and they've burnt the year on his contract, which isn't a big deal. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think he's just finding his way and being an 18-year-old kid in the NHL. But they got to figure out a way to get him going. Greenway has looked pretty solid. It's clear that the top line is all banged up. It's unfortunate. I'm just gonna say it just seems like a lost season for a couple of those guys.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Just this void.
And then really the Bills have to figure out
the Sabres. I knew it was gonna happen at some point. That's a regularity here. I knew that was gonna happen.
I gotta like donate like a nickel to charity every time I do that.
Yeah.
If I earn them a couple $100 by the time we're done with this podcast series, but
probably at that point.
But if the Bills had, oh my God,
we're doing it again.
Because I'm thinking, because I keep thinking about the Bills and needing the third defensive tackle to bring Daquan back, and I'm trying to say is the Sabres need to figure out who their third defenseman is, because listen, I think Power and Dahlin have underwhelmed this year.
Absolutely,
haven't been the best season for those two players. So again, but if you look at it, if this is going to be the worst season, then it's all up from here. I don't know. That's optimism.
Yeah, but it's optimism, but at the same time, I got
the Sabres must figure out who's 3, because I like Ryan Johnson. Maybe he's 4. I don't know if you could hype me up with Ryan Johnson being your 3. No. I really like Ryan Johnson.
We both do.
I don't fully mind Yoki Haru as a bomb pair guy, and I'm gonna say it. I'm really out on Mattias Samuelsson on that contract.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to be the 3. I don't even know what Samuelsson is anymore, and he's really overpaid. So
absolutely,
that is where their perspective of what do they do at the deadline.
What are they? Yeah, and like you said, the top line is just banged up. So it's really, like you said, a lost season for those guys, and it sucks because last season ended with so much promise, and then just to absolutely fall flat on their face is tough.
So to end the Sabres talk.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going really quick here because we want to keep it short. And there's not a game.
No, we don't have a game till the 6th of February.
Till the 6th of February. Yeah. So we could talk a little bit. Next pod, we'll talk a little bit more about what's the
game by game action.
Specifically what they should do at the deadline, what they should do here. But I do have to wonder. The Columbus Blue Jackets have a very young prospect who is very unhappy. And the producer is going to have to make an appearance here because I'm going to butcher his last name. So I know his first name is David. Is it Juracek? Juracek. All right.
Juracek.
David Juracek, who is, I believe, in the AHL now. Did they send him down officially? Or yeah. They were like healthy scratching him.
He's unhappy, you said?
He is unhappy because he's looking at other players like Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec. I mean, heck, you can even look on Power as guys that have gotten power play time, that have gotten ice time, and he is not. And Columbus sucks. So I have no idea what they're doing. And he's also not that bad.
Yeah.
He's a very high event player. So I think that's something that the Columbus maybe wants to teach him, is that the defensive responsibilities. Where else learned that than Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he fits perfectly with the Sabres. Will Columbus trade him? I would say probably not, because
they want to keep him to
he's
build.
One of the best defensive aspects. You could make a case he could be the number 1. He's currently 20. He was drafted in 2022 with 6th pick. The question remains for you, Joe.
Okay.
Would you be willing to trade Yuri Kulik plus for him? That's the cost, I think. I think it's a good prospect. It's basically an A prospect for A prospect move, and then I think the Sabres,
you got to add something.
Have to add a little bit more of a sweetener. And don't say like Olofsson, because that's a negative asset.
No. Middlestat? Because that's what the whole talk's been, is Middlestat trade value.
What? Eurocheck? Oh, okay.
Eurocheck, yeah. Middlestat.
Sorry for our Czech fans out here. We love Dominik Hasek, so sorry.
Yes. No, it's that's interesting to think about.
I think Middlestat might be too much.
Middlestat might be too much. That could be a player for player.
Middlestat
at that point,
1-on-1? I think they would want someone younger.
Yeah,
I think they would.
I'm just saying, Middlestat's accumulated a lot of trade value the way he's been playing.
I think for me, it's. I guess we'll just go on a bigger conversation here for 2 minutes. A bigger conversation for 3 is for defensive number 3 for the Sabres. I know someone's going to come and comment that the Sabres have committed $11 million to Dahlin, $8 million to Power, $19 million for the first 2 defensemen. Do we really need a number 3? The answer to that question is yes. Just going to say it. They need a third. And so you have 3 ways of doing it. Either you believe Ryan Johnson or you think Mattias Samuelsson's going to bounce back. I think you trade Middlestat for a right now number 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do more research into who would be available. I mean, it's not going to be easy to get that. And then, or you trade one of your plethora of forward prospects for a defense prospect, which is kind of what we're doing here with Columbus. Columbus doesn't have great forward depth,
right? So
but they have very good defense depth.
Yeah, you trade off with them essentially.
You trade, yes,
yeah.
I think that's what we discussed a lot last year. Is like maybe we do that, but listen, Kulik is very good, but you also have Oslin, who's very good. You have Rosine, who might be a player. You already have a lot of guys up in the NHL.
Yeah, would you be all right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I
mean, the only reason, I would be too. The only reason I said Middlestead is just because of the trade. Like, that'd be just player for player.
Sure, but
not ditching so many.
I think the Jackals in that situation, if they're going to trade one of their top young prospects,
they want a young
prospect
or two
who also
return.
sucks in the Jackets, who are not very good. They wouldn't want kind of a win now player. Middlestead's 25, I want to say 26, and you're going to pay him. No, I would trade Kulik in a heartbeat. Yeah. I would do it 1-for-1.
Very valid question.
The only question remains would be, is it possible? Well, if it's 1-for-1 and they say, well, we need to add something else, what is that piece, right? Or if it's, hey, can I maybe not take Kulik and you could take like Rosine and I had to add one other piece for that? You know what I mean? If they go, oh, it's equal, when I counter with, what about Rosine? And they go, oh, you have to add the second round pick or a protected first round pick. Do I do that trade? Like, I think that's where it comes down to. And also it ties into, does Columbus even want to move him? But heck, he made comments in an athletic piece, like in an actual, piece about his unhappiness. So, I mean, we already saw Carter Gauthier get traded from the Flyers. I know I butchered his name.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't that.
I don't know if we give him the French pronunciations. I don't know about that.
Or the Czech. I know.
The Czech.
There's the reason why I didn't even say Babbage. Okay. But then that he was another prospect, high Flyers prospect. I think he was in the same draft. Was he not 22? Yeah, he was literally the pick before him. Yeah. And he got traded because he didn't want to play for the Flyers. So, I mean, who knows? Again, that's kind of like, I think that trade would be a perfect Sabres trade for this just trade deadline of getting better for the future and maybe getting a little bit better now.
Yeah. It helps now and helps in the future. That's what you want, especially.
Helps a lot in the future because I think he's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know as much about him as you clearly do, but that would be something if I looked into it, I probably would feel the exact same way you do. And listen, we unfortunately live in a society where the Bills and Sabres cannot coexist and be good at the same time. So while the Bills are good, the Sabres will be lackluster. That's just how it goes. That's how history goes.
Listen, I believe
I believe that will change.
There was a time where the Sabres were awful and the Bills were awful. So I mean, it has to even out at some point. But.
Yes, it will even out. But without further ado, I think that wraps up this edition of the Buffalonian podcast. We got a lot more coming up. New tech, maybe new studio setup. We got a lot. You're gonna see a lot coming. Maybe hear a lot if you're one of our audio listeners. But bear with us in this off season, please. We appreciate all the listeners out there for the season. We still have a hockey season to get through. So come on, you gotta stick through the rough ones with us here. But I'm Joe Callie. As always, I'm joined by none other than Dom Loss. Dom, how do you always end these, buddy?
Go Bills, baby.
Go Bills.